Like, what would you do with that 10K if you had to spend it?
Well, the problem is, no, I already have $10,000. So I've already
but you have an extra. You have an extra.
I know, but that extra
You're like,
is
I don't know what to do.
She's like, 10K means nothing to me, you poor piece of shit. I am wealthy. You understand? Welcome to Cash Cuties,
where we talk about money with your favorite honeys.
Hey, I'm Fumi
And I'm Steffie Bake. If you're listening on your Apple Pod app, please leave a review, hit follow on Spotify, and sub to our YouTube channel for the video version of this podcast. All the links are available in the episode description below.
Click. Shout out to our Dono Daddies. These are people who give us money on Patreon. What is Patreon? It is the best way to support this podcast. You get access to bonus episodes and behind the scenes content in exchange for a donation. So if you want to support this podcast, if you want to support our lifestyles, our very expensive lifestyles,
so expensive,
please check us out. 2 people donated this week. Shout out to P. She upgraded from $5 to $10. So thank you so much. Repeat.
Spending us.
Hey.
Spend that money on us. And our Dono Mommy. Sarah C. for $4.50 in pounds. UK pounds.
We have a lot of international people donating.
Hell yeah.
And it's interesting because you think it's hot?
Oh, we're worldwide, baby.
Oh, well, I'm just like, what's going on? Are we really hot in England? Should we be doing a tour in Glastonbury, my lady?
Oh, I love that. Let's go. I love that. I think that's so hot.
I love that.
Yeah, people be watching us.
People be watching us all over the place. Maybe the UK is thriving right now. I don't read the news.
I was going to say maybe they like how our financial decisions out here.
Oh, they like watching us be stupid?
Because, the U.S. currency is like the currency that people
yeah.
use
Also,
all over the world. So they're like paying attention to our economy.
through Cash Cuties. They're like, I need to know what's going on in America, and they're tuning in. Okay, maybe. And if
they
they're
want to
doing
know
that,
what regular people like us.
then I gotta strongly advise against that. If you're Sarah C, please get out of here. Read the Wall Street Journal. Read Fortune 500. Please don't tune into Cash Cuties for financial advice. Jesus Christ. But anyways, if you want to shout out on this podcast and bonus content, check out patreon.com/cashcutiespod. Today we have a guest on who's not here yet. But we're going to talk about something called the FIRE movement. This is something people have emailed us about, and it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it's essentially, the way I understand it, like the simplest elevator pitches, they're just people who save like a motherfucker in their 20s and their 30s, and they kind of retire by like 40 or 41. And it's this thing that like popped up. It's kind of new, I think. It's probably popped up in like the 2010s. I remember hearing about it in college. And we're going to talk to somebody who's part of that movement today. But before we introduce her, Steffie and I, we've been doing some research on it. We've been listening to some podcasts about it. We've been watching YouTube videos about it. And it's given you a lot of anxiety. And I just kind of wanted to ask you, like, is this something you think you could see yourself doing?
I think I've been literally trying to step away from, I think I was naturally, part of the FIRE community movement. I think I was already in it, not knowing I was in it.
When you were younger?
I think, I think that gives me some anxiety because I'm like, oh shit, this is what I used to want to be such a
What do you mean
saver.
by that? You were already in it.
So I think I spent a lot of time having so much anxiety over money and saving and being like, I'm getting old, so that means I need to save more. I need to save more if I want to have a family. I need to save more. I don't think I was spending money a healthy way, in a way that I enjoyed.
Okay.
And on things that I liked. And money became the primary thing I thought about every day.
Right, on a day-to-day basis.
So I think listening to this makes me remember like my life and how it was, and about how it was so monetarily motivated that when I hear about it, it just stresses me out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one of the things about the FIRE movement that's kind of crazy is like, there's a difference between being frugal and saving, which is sort of like me, and the FIRE movement. And so like one of the things that they say is you're supposed to save like at least 50% of your income. There's like different equations that get you to where you need to be depending on what your target age is that you want to retire. And so people save anywhere from like 50 to 80% of their income. And that's like an insane, that's like, if you live in New York, LA, I don't even think you can really do that. Like, let's just say you made $100,000. What, now you're working with $20,000? You can't live like that. You got to live with your parents and shit, So it's like an extremely like, it's just an extreme thing. And
when I was talking to you about this, and it like stresses me out a little bit, is because I think my mom was part of FIRE.
Asian moms are part of FIRE. Asian moms.
Every immigrant family is part of FIRE. They just had no idea.
They just don't say it.
They don't say it.
Yeah.
And everything was about hoarding your money. Everything was, and I think that's why it stresses me out. But I think I was doing my best to save as much money as I can after I went through that phase of like when I first started making my own money. And then I just started putting more into savings, and then.
But it wasn't like a month. It wasn't a set amount per month.
No, especially at that age. And then I was building, when I got into real estate, I was building my portfolio, sort of watching my other investor clients and what they were doing and purchasing property. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to save my money. But in between, I would also like just splurge. There was no order to anything.
Right. I just remember. I was trying to save as much as I can, but when I was 22, my rent was $830 a month in Carroll Gardens, and I remember I only saved. I was trying to save $800 a month, but typically it was closer to $500, and I was making $55 at the time. And that's not that much, and that's not enough to, we're talking about, they're saying you got to save 80% of your salary. What's 800 divided by 55,000? That's not even 10%. You know what I mean? That's like such a small amount. So, and I remember feeling like, I was being frugal because at the time, this is 2012, 13. A lot of my friends, their rent was like $1,200, $1,300. And at the time in New York, to me, that felt high. And I was like, I don't want to pay over $1,000. So I found like a really small room for $830 because I was being frugal. So that's me being frugal, saving $800 a month or something like that. And I can only imagine if my other friends we're making the same amount of money because we work at the same company, and their rent is $400 more than me. So they probably weren't saving, or if they were saving, it's probably like $100 a month or something like that.
Were they getting help, maybe financial help from
their parents? It's possible. It's not that they asked, but it's like, to me at the time, 2012 or 22, I thought $55,000 was like a lot of money. We were like, we don't have families. And if you don't have debt,
that is a lot, especially during that time.
And I don't have a lot of expenses because I don't have children, and I don't have. It's in New York. We don't have cars, so we don't have car payments. I don't own anything. So
did you have anxiety around money during that time when you would be saving that much?
No, because I really thought I was doing well. I was like, oh, this is great.
But you were. That was
good. At the time,
yeah.
for sure. I think so. That's why it's like, but that was me being frugal, only being able to save $500, and so. To me, reading this definition of people who are like, you got to save 70%, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing to even get there? So I'm super excited to talk to our guest today about it and to learn more about it. And you are feeling anxious, Steffi, but maybe we'll get through this. Maybe she'll change her mind, and we'll come out of it being FIRE cuties.
Maybe.
Our guest today is the host of the Inside Out Money podcast and is part of the FIRE movement. Here to teach us more about financial independence and retiring early. Please welcome to the show, Maggie Tucker. Woo. Yay!
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being on the show. And we love that you are plugging your show in the background. We got to get one of those signs. That's nice. So just to start off, let's get right into it. For the listeners who may not know, because this is a personal finance podcast, but Steffi and I we don't know anything. And so this is the first time we're having an actual smart person on, so we're super excited. But for the people who don't know, what is your elevator pitch definition of FIRE? What is it to you for people who don't know?
Yeah. So FIRE, first off, the letters stand for Financial Independence, Retire Early. So it's FIRE. It's not fire like the fire festival. People sometimes get confused. That's the bad kind of fire. This is the good kind of fire. But it is essentially the concept of getting to a place of FI, which is the first half of it. So the FI, which means financial independence. So that you have enough money, and there's a lot of different definitions that we can get into, but that you have enough money that you, at one end of it, never have to work again and can retire early, which is the end of it. Many people just want to get to the FIA and they don't actually pull the plug and retire. They just want to get to the point where they can, and they have complete flexibility and options, and they can do whatever they want. There's a lot of different versions of FIRE. in terms of, how much you've saved up and how little you have to work in the future and kind of what expectations are on you. But ultimately, the end goal of people that are really focused on FIRE is to retire early and never have to work again. And the key word there is have to work again. Doesn't mean you might do something you want to do, something passion focused. It's not about the money, but you don't have to. You've got enough money that you can live for the rest of your life.
And this is crazy, but you retired May of 2022 at the age of 41. That's correct?
I did, yes.
And that's like such a huge accomplishment. Is that like, and to do something like that, I'm assuming you have to commit to this kind of community and this mindset pretty earlier on. So when did you, and also, your husband, like when did you guys decide to become part of this community? Because I would imagine if you want to retire by 41, which I think is so young, you got to start in your 20s, right? So is this something you've always wanted?
Well, no, it's not even something I was aware of for a long time. And depending on the reality of your financial situation, you maybe had to have started when you were 20. And look, it's great if you did and you were aware of it and you got an early start, because the power of compound interest makes it to where the earlier the better. But I was not even aware of FIRE until my mid 30s, I would say. So somewhere in the, well, here's the thing. So my husband and I, we were both high earners. We had been living below our means. I like to say I had kind of self-diagnosed bag lady syndrome, which is I've been living below my means for a long time, but I didn't really know why. I didn't have a specific reason other than I just was somewhat naturally frugal, but also splurged a lot. And I knew I just liked the idea of security, right? I liked the idea of knowing that I had money saved. I didn't even really know what to do with it. And I wasn't that savvy about how I saved it and investing and things like that. I didn't start investing until I was 36, which is, it'd be a lot better if I started when I was in my early 20s, but there's a lot of reasons why I didn't really know what to do. I was kind of overwhelmed with options. But essentially, to answer your question, I didn't learn about it until later in life. And by the time I learned about it, I was super interested in it and very enamored by the concept of it. And I happened to already be in a decent financial position. And then my husband and I, so again, I was about 35. So it was, 6 years before we retired. For those 6 years, like maybe 6 to 7 years, we did get really aggressive in our savings. We got even more. We had already been somewhat good about stuff, but we just supercharged it and did even more.
We were talking, we're in our 30s, we're in our 30s, and we're like, is it too late? Because everything we read is like, you got to start when you're like 22.
Fucked,
Yeah, and hearing you saying you started at 36.
You said 36, and then you retired by 41.
Well, keep in mind, it's all the math of what your savings rate is, right? And how much you're able to save. So there's how much you make and how much you save. Many people are focused on how much they make, but they're spending all of what they make, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter.
I don't know when I truly, can you help us figure out what that, I can't even imagine the number I want to be okay, now I'm ready to retire.
Yeah.
How do you know what your cutoff?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, early is most people on average retire when they're 65 to 70. So early is anything that is earlier than you working longer than you want to work and beyond, I would say, a traditional retirement age, which again, my dad worked up till he was past 70. He was still working when he died, which is sad because he could have enjoyed more freedom and kind of the fruits of his labor in many ways, but didn't even have that mentality to.
So he had to work. It was out of necessity.
Yeah, they maybe would have been okay to stop, but I'm not sure he fully knew that. I'm not sure he was, savvy enough with their finances to know exactly if they had enough. And I wasn't focused enough on stuff like this at that time either to be having those discussions with them. But my point is more, there's no, early is all relative, right? I don't think most people doing this are in their 20s. I think I see a lot more people in their late 30s, 40s, 50, even retiring in your early 50s. That's early. That's 10 plus years early to many people.
Is there a competition within your community to be I'm going to retire by Oh, you retired at 41?
Yeah,
I'm actually 38.
Do you say that at parties?
Yeah,
You're like, hey, I'm Maggie. I retired
is
when I
there
was
a little
41.
bit of this like
Yeah.
high nose?
That is funny. It's funny when you were asking about the age. I was like, well, there's no like retirement police. There's no like fire police. It's like it has to be by this age. It has to be, you know, done this way. But no, there's definitely. I know y'all are joking, but there's definitely no competition. I would say it's more a friendly thing. But I will tell you, we retired. My husband and I decided just for fun to retire on the exact same day. Like when we gave our notice, we told our employers that day. Even my employer was trying to like negotiate. And I was like, no, sorry. I kind of lined it up with Greg. So it's not negotiable. But he wanted it the day before he turned. God, he was 43. He was joking. He did it the day before his birthday so he could say he retired when he was 42. But the next day he turned 43. So
Gotcha.
maybe there is a little competition, at least for him.
Okay.
It's like those, you know, that 30 over 30, like the list, and
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
fuck, we've never. I noticed that there's a new one. There's like a 40 or something.
There's always like a 10 under
always a
10
new list.
now.
And then when you miss that list, they now you can just make your own like 50 over 50. I'm gonna make a new list. Like, I'm gonna make a list that's like 43 over 43 and be
Thank you.
I'm on it.
Yeah, I love that. Wait, so going back to that, you know, what is that target number? Because we were watching a lot of YouTube videos, and we were watching this one guy. He was like, yeah, and I think he was also extremely frugal, living with his parents, and then he lived not in a city, and his goal was like 300 or 400 in savings, you know, 4,000, which to me doesn't sound like a lot. And then he was like, yep, and then I'm gonna live off of $25,000 a year for the rest of my life. And I'm like, that sounds awful, you know. So what is that?
But
what
it
is
depends on where you live.
I guess
like
it
if you're in
depends on your lifestyle.
in Southeast
Yeah,
Asia somewhere where you're not, you know, it's not,
I mean, he's American. I don't know where he lived, but I think 25K is pretty tough in America these days. But yeah,
You two are in LA, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't even live off what we're living off now if we were in LA, right? We're in Atlanta. The cost of living is significantly
Atlanta's still
different.
a city. I assume it's not.
Yeah, real
cheap.
estate. Everything else, like food probably is everything is the same, but real estate is significantly different, I would say. I couldn't own the home I own, the size home in the neighborhood we own here in LA as an example.
Right.
A lot of people have that question on like, what is the math? It's a little bit of it depends, and it's different for everybody, but the simple version of it is there's this thing based on a study that's called the Trinity study that is the simplified version is it's called the 25 times rule or the 4% rule. And it is, you need to know in a pretty accurate way, you need to know your annual expenses. And so let's, for simple math, I'm going to say $100,000. And so you need to have 25 times that to have enough money for the rest of your life. Now, so if your expenses are $100,000 a year, that's $2.5 million. Now, do you need to have that in real estate, in brokerage accounts? I mean, it needs to be roughly accessible. Part of that's your 401k. So it's in assets that you can in some way liquidate throughout the course of your life. So the question of like what you include in there, like do you include your primary home? There's a lot of nuances to it, but the simple rule is 25 times. And again, that's a very oversimplified.
Is 25 years?
No, no, not at all. That's just a.
Well, because you're retired so early, you're gonna be alive.
Yeah,
in your 70s. So
no, the 25 times is based on a 4% withdrawal rate. So
okay.
It's the idea that it's basically including in that math. And again, there's a lot more that goes in this math, and there's a lot of probability, but it's assuming some average market returns based on historical performance of the market. It's assuming some average inflation over the course of whatever. And so yes, that specific 25 times rule, which also equates to a 4% withdrawal rate. That means I can, if you, let's say your expenses are $100,000 a year. And so you have 2.5 million saved. That means you can withdraw 4% a year. 4% of 2.5 million is $100,000. And you won't run out of money. Now, it matters whether you retire when you're 30, or maybe a different way to say it is whether you have a 60-year retirement, which I might have if I live to be 100, or whether you have a 30-year retirement. And it matters if you plan on working a little bit, right? Like my husband and I retired from fairly demanding jobs in corporate America. Well, he worked for a hospital system, but I worked in corporate America for a large global company. And we don't want to go back to those sorts of jobs, but we might do something and, something more entrepreneurial. We have some rental properties, so we have some passive income. And so that, actually, I don't like calling rental properties passive income, but whatever. The idea is that income reduces how much you actually need because you've got income coming in over the years also. But again, the simple math is 25 times, and that allows you to withdraw 4% each year. And the length of your retirement, which I know y'all were asking about, the probability of you running out of money has more to do with market returns and cost of living and inflationary things we can't predict anyways. We do our best to predict them. And so, yes, the shorter your retirement, the higher probability that 4% rule or the 25 times rule works out. Even at the length of my retirement, there's like a 95% probability that I won't run out of money. Now, again, that's with no additional money coming in. I'm not assuming Social Security, which I'll get in some form. Who knows what'll happen to it, in the next 20 years. So it's a tricky question on like, how do you calculate it? Because everybody calculates it different based on, do you expect an inheritance? Do you expect that you're going to need extra money to take care of aging parents? Those are two different bogeys in very different directions. So there's a lot of math and very personalized decisions that go into what somebody feels comfortable having enough.
You had mentioned that when you said that you were going to get into FIRE, you went into extreme mode in terms of savings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How does like dating and relationship work under those contexts? Because we were talking about could we go on a date with somebody who was part of the FIRE community like mid process,
Because
I don't know.
I got dry thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, Steffie likes her nice things.
First off, there's a dating site. I've never used it, but I don't
Oh my
know.
God.
It's a FI dating site. I can't remember the name of it, but I can Google it real quick because there's not that. There's like one
Wait,
site.
I need to.
I don't know how many people are on it, but it's called Fire Dating. It's at firedating.me.
You would hate
it
that,
says
Steffie.
there's
I know, but it's fascinating.
9,600
Guys like
people
me.
on it. It says there's been 39 marriages. I know a couple
That's
people in the
low.
FI space.
That's low, Maggie.
That is low. That is low. Right. Yeah. Your odds are low, but somewhere there could be someone out there. Okay. So my thing is, I would say take the FIRE piece out of it, because what I believe about relationships and money, and this is based on no research, let's be clear, just me talking to lots of people anecdotally. Any relationship will struggle when you're not aligned on money. So whether you're FIRE and like super, super frugal, but I know a lot of people where they're not even FIRE, they're just trying to like get by and not live paycheck to paycheck every day. And they have poor communication around money. They're not able to, it all goes into like communication, right? They're not aligned on what their goals are. They don't talk about things well without getting into like fights about it. They're not able to kind of talk lovingly and openly about what they want to do and just understanding their goals and why they want to spend money the way they want to spend. And, usually there's somebody that's frustrated that somebody else is spending too much money and it's not making enough and whatever it might be. So I think I tend to have a belief that people that are from similar socioeconomic backgrounds tend to make better relationships and more successful relationships, because you tend to want the same thing. So, and my husband Greg and I talk about it all the time, where we'll just look at a certain person and we're like, look, no judgment, except I guess we're judging them, but where
Go off.
a polite judgment, where we're like, oh, I can never be with that person because they just want so much and need so much of a lifestyle. And Greg and I are often thankful. I'm like, oh, I'm really glad that we're aligned on like, again, we don't live a super, super, super frugal lifestyle, right? We're careful and intentional with our money. And we've been, again, we were high earners and we saved a lot and we've put it in the market and it's done well. And, it'll continue to grow over time. But we still go and, we'll spend $1,000 a night on a hotel room sometimes, not all the time. We'll splurge every couple of years on something kind of special. And we still, like, we just don't we don't naturally go out for like $500 dinners, right? Like we go out for a nice dinner and it's like $100.
During this phase, you said you were aggressively saving, which I'm like curious to talk to you more about. I feel like maybe you do need to say no to drinks, or maybe you do need to say no to that bachelor party. And I that could be isolating sometimes, depending, you were lucky enough to have a nice paying job, so maybe it didn't affect that much, for you. But if I was doing it, I would have to pull some pretty extreme measures. And I could see myself, if I did that for even 3 years, my friend group would naturally change, you know? And I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do think, first off, I'm like a 40-year-old with 3 kids. So I don't go to a lot of like bachelor parties or you know what I mean? Like I just don't have, I'm not in that
Molly.
phase of, I mean, I might, but I'm not doing it recently. And it is a very, like the types of things that I even are kind of in my wheelhouse and in my day-to-day environment and community don't tend to tempt me to do things that I wouldn't want to do anyways. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe that, but I will say there's not a lot of things I deprive myself. Right. But let me ask you a question. Like Fumi, when you were like, I could never, do you know what your expenses are for a year?
I do.
What is it?
Oh, like the exact number? I would have to look it up.
Just rough.
But, well, you know what? I'll be honest. I used to look at this number very frequently every month when I was in my 20s. And then I kind of stopped looking at it after I started making above 6 figures, because I'm like you where I'm always living as if I make 75, no matter how much I make. And so it after I started making over 100, I didn't need to look at it because I knew I was always saving. But up until I made 75 when I was in my like early 20s, I had to look at it because I was only saving, like I was only able to save like $500 a month, you know, with New York City rent and expenses and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't really know anymore. I mean, what's yours? What is average?
Ours is, we do a bunch of podcasts where we break this down too, but it's in the, it's about 100,000. Sometimes it can
per year.
Yeah, per year.
With
Now,
kids.
but also
But you
we
have
paid off our
kids.
mortgage.
And
Yeah,
you
with
have-
kids, that's
You have
low.
kids, right?
But we've paid off our mortgage. I paid off my mortgage when I was divorced. I had been paying it off aggressively just anyways because I didn't like the idea of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it worked out well that when I kind of learned about FIRE and I was like, oh, well, I don't have a mortgage. I already could save a lot. I just got way more creative and I'd say savvy in how I was saving and more tax optimized ways. But yeah, we're around 100,000. Give or take 5 to 10.
And you think that's high, or you think that's low for a family of 4, or I don't know how many kids?
Well, that's why I say I don't deprive myself a lot, because I mean, we're it's not like we're living on. There are people who live on like $25,000 a year, and I know some people like that, and I would find what they do and don't do for me would be in the category of deprivation. But everybody's different, so for them, it's not.
When you were going through your like aggressive saving, was there anything you deprived yourself of, like? You know, what was your version of that extreme you're talking about? You know, because some people move back home with their homes. Like maybe you didn't buy a new car since high school. Like what is that thing that you did over those 5-6 years? You know? Yeah.
Again, most of the things I quote deprived myself of were just lifestyle inflation things that I didn't do. So I didn't buy, you know, super high-end luxury cars, things that my peers at work were doing. I didn't put a swimming pool in the backyard. So they were big, expensive. Like I didn't take my bonus every year, which was a good size. I'd take it and I would save it or like put it towards my mortgage or something. I didn't take it and build a swimming pool, which again is what other people were doing. My kids weren't in private school. I wasn't moving to a more expensive neighborhood. There's you know, I could move to another neighborhood in Atlanta and I would need twice the amount of money to get the same house we live in now. And we're still in a good neighborhood. And it's all a kind of trade-off of what you care about, I would say.
What do you think the dark side of FIRE is?
I actually think it's related to some of the questions you guys are asking, in the sense of, I recently read Die with Zero. Have you read that?
What's it called?
Die with Zero?
No.
It's a good book. It's worth reading, but it covers a lot of different topics. But one of the things that it's influenced me to do is just spend more and enjoy my life while I'm here and while I'm young and can do stuff. So I think the dark side of FI, which is a great question, by the way, is people that are overly depriving themselves for this end goal, and they're more focused on the end destination and not the journey. And I could maybe pick out a few years when when Greg and I kind of had this goal and knew we were close, wanted to retire, and we were like really stressed out in our jobs, and we had 3 young kids across the 2 of us, and we just wanted out. So we were in this mental phase where we just wanted to get out of the jobs. They were great jobs. We had a lot of tenure at the companies we were with. We were well respected. We liked the jobs in theory. It was the demand of the jobs that was just too much. And the grind was just too much for both of us eventually. So I think the dark side is people who want to get to FIRE so bad that they kind of just become so obsessed with money and are like, won't spend money on anything and become a little selfish even, right? And they're not willing to like, you know, when I go out to dinner with, and I went through a small phase like this where because I was so focused on like tracking our expenses and like getting something down, you know, I would think nothing before I had the FIRE goal of like when I'd go out to friends. And again, I made a lot more money than a lot of my friends. Like I wouldn't think anything about treating for dinner. But when I was like in my FIRE thing or buying drinks or if I bought someone a drink, be like, yeah, don't worry about it. When I was in that phase for a couple years, I was overly focused and it became a little like obsessive. And so that to me would be the dark side, is that obsessiveness on frugality and even being like cheap, which I think is different than frugality, is the dark side of it, because you're overly focused on trying to plan for the future and you're not thinking about the present and being generous and kind and, you know, just reasonable with your money.
I think I like what you're talking about because it has to do with almost like the social aspect of just going out and having a good time, which requires you to be a bit selfless. You have to like, there is this part of like sharing, and it feels good to do that too. But I think like we've talked about when we're not making money, which is kind of similar psychologically of what you're saying, which is, it's not that you're not making money, but you're almost thinking like, I need to save. Like everything's about saving. It's about, and it is very like self, you know, it's a self thing. The same way we're trying to preserve our money, plus we're not making money. So it's like our head's going there.
I mean, like you hit on a good point. And I honestly think I've been better at this since I started this podcast, because like, I do think that, so like my whole background is like, I always had a corporate job, didn't worry about money. Then I was like working in comedy, running for TV, making so much money. And then I didn't have that job anymore, and then now I'm like, what now, you know? And I'm kind of like sort of not having a ton of income come in. Obviously had like savings and stuff, and I went through like a 6 to 8 months where I was just like in that mode. And I just feel like, you know, for people who are doing this extreme frugal lifestyle in their 20s, it's like you can't buy back that time, you know? Like you can never be 25 again. And I do think there is something to be said about like going to Barcelona when you're 25 with your boys versus going to Barcelona with your beautiful family when you're 45. That is not the same thing.
It's very different.
And I think you should do both, but like you can no matter how much money you have, you can't buy back that going to Barcelona with your boys when you're 25 on a budget. Even if it's on a budget, that's going to be the funnest time of your life, you know? Yeah. And I think people can get obsessive. And like while I was sort of like, because I do like comedy full time now, while I was like sort of chasing that dream, I like said no to a lot of different things and opportunities because I wanted to stay on track and just work on comedy. And that is like a tiny regret that I have, is that I didn't like maintain some of my friendships and like do these things in my 20s, because I was just like, no, I'm focusing on this goal right now. This one goal is to make it as a comedian. And so, yeah, I do think that like if I could go back in time, that's like the one thing that I would maybe slightly change, you know?
Well, I'm wondering, based on what you're saying, right, is that you and your husband at that time didn't enjoy the job you had because there were demands. Now, if you enjoyed your job, say that it was podcasting, because obviously you enjoy doing this. Like, if you were doing this, do you think that you might not even be part of FIRE?
Yeah.
Do you think you're doing it only because you didn't enjoy, like, and people, they're like grinding hard because they're trying to get out of this system that they don't really want to be in because it is for a financial decision?
Yeah. Was it reactionary or was it more like proactive?
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 things to us that I think made us finally do it, and I think hold true to your question. So it wasn't just the stress out at work. It was the combination of the stress out at work and just the demands and just being exhausted, of realizing we had enough money to be fine forever, if not most of ever. And that we could always go back to work later. I always remind people of that, of like, nothing's a forever decision. You can always change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was just like, life is short. I knew too many people my age that were dying, Suddenly, my dad had recently died. Just a bunch of different things where I was like, life is short. You know, we have a limited amount of time left with our kids in our house where they actually like us. We kind of missed the boat on that even by the time we finally pulled the trigger. Our kids are, you know, in the 11 to 14 range now, and almost 15 next week. And they don't want to hang out with us a lot, right? It's just a different age and a different vibe. But we did want to be around for like the next 10 years that our kids were at home and be available and be able to go to all their games and just be like active parents, which was hard for us to do when we were working so much. And we certainly, even if we were there, we weren't like present and engaged. We were, you know, checking email on our phones and thinking about the next 10 things we needed to do. So I think even if again, I did like my job, but even if I moved to part-time for a while before I finally left fully, I think I still just needed the complete freedom and like the idea of just, I'm loving, and it's a weird transition. So it's not all like perfect and, you know, unicorns and rainbows, but I really love like getting up most days and just having complete control over what I do that day. And I'm volunteering a lot. I'm very busy actually, but I just like being able to do what I want to do.
By the way, I looked at your LinkedIn, so I know you worked at IHG. Shout out. They were a client of mine a long time ago. We did something with Holiday Inn Express. But I remember like in New York when I was working 9 to 5, I would look outside and it would be like a beautiful day. And I would just be like, but I have to be in here like 90% of the week. And that like was such a weird thought because people just do that for 30 years, you know?
Yeah.
30 years, 30, 40 years. They just let these beautiful days go by and they're just spending most of their time inside a fucking cubicle. And so, absolutely.
I like thinking that IHG just hires people who make them want to like leave their job.
It's so bad.
They're just like, God damn it, forget it.
Yeah, we work at the IHG like, I actually want to chase my dream now because this sucks so bad.
Oh my God.
Can I ask something about your kids? Because, you know, 2023 is a different time. And I remember when I was a teenager, you know, sometimes we'd come up in school like, oh, what do your parents do? You know, like sometimes you give a project about what your parents do. They come and do like a talk, you know, if your dad has a cool job, they come in and do a talk for career day. You know, have you dealt with that where your kids don't know what to say? Are there judgment from other parents in the community, like your kids' friends' parents, you know, that you guys don't work? Do they think you're snooty? Like, have you dealt with any backlash from that?
Yeah, nobody thinks we're snooty because if you saw Greg and I, we like walk around like we're like going for a run at any given moment. Like we're just sort of, we're super casual, like chill people. And so I don't think we're not like driving around in like a Rolls Royce or something.
We're retired bitches throwing dollar bills.
And we don't like lead with that, you know, but we should maybe. My kid, first off, the kids don't, I have worried that sometimes like, am I setting a bad role model for my kids? Because like, I do think there's value in kids seeing you work hard, but my kids saw that for 10 years. So they got a glimpse of it. And I don't think it's necessarily like healthy for your kids to see you like come home exhausted, you know, just all that. But they don't really care. Like they don't, first off, they don't want me to come to career day. They're all too embarrassed by it now.
You're like, my kids actually hate me. And
I could only come when they were younger. Like kids don't want to be seen with you at school. They don't want you, like I've been like told to never come. I volunteer a lot at my kids' elementary school. You're all in middle
involved.
School.
Because you have so much time.
This is the first year they're in middle school and high school. And my youngest will still let me like show up. But the other two are like, do not. She's like, please do not volunteer for anything at this school. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'll do something like behind the scenes, but I'm not allowed on campus during the day. They're very like embarrassed by, not the fire, you know, anything about that. They just don't want, parents aren't cool. And I actually think I'm look at my braces. Like I could fit in there, you know? They might, and then other friends' parents, look, as we get to, if we like meet new people and they don't realize we're retired or they're kind of asking why we're just hanging out in the middle of the day, we'll tell them that we early retired. Most people are more like fascinated by it and kind of jealous because, I mean, most people I know, whether they like their jobs or not, the thought of not working sounds really lovely. So we have received nothing but positivity, at least to our
nice.
faces.
Yeah.
You know?
What are some easy ways for people to let the people know, the Cash Cuties know
How to save money.
save money?
Yeah, what's like the easy, when people are like, oh, I gotta save money. I always say it's rent, because it's like if you live in a shittier place, that's just money that you're gonna have extra for. But that's hard for some people, because I always think it's so hard to say no to drinks or like food. It's just food, and you're really saving like
Just food.
Just food.
It's
but
just food.
I always say rent, but from your professional point of view, what if someone's like, man, I gotta save money, I gotta have 10K by the end of the year, like what can I do?
Yeah. So I would, number one, start with, you got to track your expenses, because you can't start figuring out what to pull back on if you don't know what you're spending. And many people have no idea what they're spending. So I often equate this is not always the best comparison, but to if you're trying to lose weight, there's all these like calorie tracker apps. And if you're trying to lose weight and you start tracking calories, you don't realize how many calories are in certain things. So you'll eat something and you're like, oh, I think I'm eating a salad. This feels healthy. And it's like between whatever's on that salad and the dressing, it's like incredibly unhealthy, depending on, what it is. And so you don't know until you start tracking stuff. So I'd say track your expenses and then start to like, you writing that down? Write that down. Track your expenses and then also track your net worth. But track your expenses and yeah, like you said, Fumi, the rent, car, and house are like the top 3 big expenses for most people. So if you can make cuts there, that's awesome. If you're younger, and I say younger because usually when you're younger, you care less about this than as you get older. But if you're younger and you can have a roommate, you can do some form of house hacking to, make your rent less expensive. And if you're older and you can move to a different area, or any age, you can move to a lower cost of living area, or, again, all of this should be in line with what matters to you and what I'm very big into, like just intentional values-based spending. So everything can't matter to you, or it could, but you may never get anywhere financially and be able to save anything. And so I would track your expenses and start looking at like realizing like, oh my God, I had no idea I'm spending $2,000 a year on eating out. Could I bump that back to $1,000 to $1,000 a month? And then I've just saved $10,000. I was spending really that's $12,000. And so, and I'll give you examples. And this is like something when you were talking about kind of just the idea of dating and other things. Greg and I, when we still go out by ourselves sometimes and like, go out and, drop $100 some night, kind of going out to some bars or eating or whatever. But most of the time that it's just the two of us, we tend to eat at home more, so that when there's anything social, we'll never say no for money reasons. Like we'll always, unless we just don't want to do it. And we're like, this just sounds terrible. And like, I don't want to go do that thing, but I would never say no for money reasons. I wouldn't be like, oh, I don't, and I did when I was like a little obsessive for a little while. I'd be like, ooh, I don't want to eat out right now. Like I'm really trying to, save that $20, and it's like ridiculous and kind of silly. But I just think there's a lot of times where you could cut something in half and you're not really depriving yourself. You're just pulling back on that. Right. So people tend to like look at like, oh, quit spending money at Starbucks and like the latte factor. And that might be different. Like whatever your latte factor is might be different depending on who you are. If you really care about Starbucks and that makes you happy every morning, like go for it, or your local coffee shop. But to a lot of people, myself included, like that's not what's most important to me. I just don't, I like to travel, and we spend $20,000 to $30,000 of that $100,000 spend is on travel every year.
Is that your biggest splurge for yourself? Like,
yeah, that's our biggest spend category, because we don't have a mortgage. If we had a mortgage, it might beat that, but since we don't have a mortgage, like when we rank our spending, travel is always at the top.
Do you have like a personal splurge, like not as like a family, but like something you really want, like you wish you had like 10, like what would you do with that 10K if you had to spend it?
That's a good question. I might need a minute, but I mean, at a high level, like the types of things I splurge on would be, like I like nice electronics. I have an expensive MacBook.
Yeah. That's him.
This whole thing is like, it's I feel like you were like destined for this, because in general, like no matter how much money you had, it just doesn't seem like you were ever living like a millionaire. I don't know how much money you're making, but like even if you're making $500,000, you're living like you make 100.
Yeah,
like, so
which is what I was doing.
It doesn't really change much for you,
Yeah.
And I think it's a good fit personality wise.
Yeah, well, we avoided like lifestyle inflation. We avoided lifestyle inflation. So I was probably spending less than $100,000 in my 20s, but not that much less. And if you throw in the mortgage, it was just on different things. Like I wasn't traveling so much, but I had a mortgage. And so if I didn't track my spending back then, but if I did go back to it, like my guess is that's kind of around what it was. And so if I had $10,000, one thing I really want to buy and the thing is like Greg and I could go buy this stuff tomorrow. We're very thoughtful about it. We've been into rucking lately. Do you know what that is?
No.
Rucking?
It
It sounds like some sort of like weird sexual thing.
Yeah.
But
and you're like, and it is. It's very expensive.
We can maybe turn it into something sexual, but no, it's walking or hiking with like heavy weights on. It's like a military training thing, but it's really good physical fitness activity. And so we've been putting like weights in our hiking bags, but they make these like nice rucking kind of vests. I know. I don't know why. Like I would never do this.
You know what I just imagined is for some weird reason I imagined like gold like medallions that you guys have turned into
like those bricks of gold
and you
from
put
Ocean's
that
11?
so you're like being assholes and like and putting that into your vests as you walk around. You're like, I'm fucking made of money, I'm retired.
Oh, these are just weights.
Money.
That's what.
But like
that's
the
weight.
rucking packs and the weights are like $600, and if we both get one, it'd be like $1,000 for both of us.
Yeah, but see, hiking is a free hobby, so it doesn't even cost. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, I'm really into golfing, the membership alone would be that much a month or whatever. You know, so that's even when you're splurging, it's like still kind of on budget, which is great. You know, I like to hike for an exercise too because it's free. So I'm with you there.
I don't even know. That's a great question though. I don't know what I would spend $10,000 on. It'd be a lot of little things. I mean, I'd probably get some new sneakers. But the thing is, when I want a pair of new sneakers, like I buy a pair. So I just don't.
Yeah.
I think if you really gave
I like
me $10,000,
that I just broke you right now. She's broken right now. She's like,
wait, extra money? What?
I already have $10,000, so I've already.
No, but you have an extra. You have an extra.
I know, but that extra.
Like,
is
I don't know what to do.
She's like, 10K means nothing to me, you poor piece of shit. I am wealthy. You understand? 3 zeros?
Oh
Are you serious?
What are you driving right now?
We used to both have Priuses. That was one of the things.
You guys have so much
info. Talk about your
Dude,
Prius.
she's like me, but if I was a white woman, that's what I'm.
When you're not, except I would tip at the car wash. Let's be clear.
How much? How much? Is it a percentage? How much are you tipping? I love that.
Okay, let's move on to our unofficial analysis where you sent us your Mint statements, which I love. Let's be best friends. I love people who use Mint. Those are the only people I trust. I've been using it since 2012. Shout out to Mint, who has over 10 years of my financial data. Okay, so this
they know a lot about you.
This is your credit card statement. It's actually your Mint statement, which means it's all 11 credit cards. It's you and your shared account and your husband's account. Yeah. And we just looked at some stuff and we found some interesting stuff we wanted to ask you about. Okay.
So your finances are all mixed together.
They're all mixed together, but
we actually have separate finances, but we do track it all and like manage together, and then we kind of settle up.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because we were so like the first thing we noticed is that who spent the most, and Maggie, according to the thing you sent us,
I'm sure
59% of the spendings were coming from you.
I would have like no question I spend the most. But that isn't all like my spending. Mm-hmm. That's just who's
paying for it.
It's like mom stuff, like having to purchase the thing.
Yeah, like I'm more, like women are often making more of the financial decisions in a relationship. If there's a man and a woman. If there's two women, I don't know who wins in that,
We'll have to have them on the pod.
Combo,
That's interesting you say that, because I imagine men to be making more of the financial decision back in the day. Are you saying like more now?
Financial decisions, like they might be, stereotypically deciding where money moves, but in terms of who's making the spending decisions.
Oh, okay, right.
It typically is a woman. And even from a marketing standpoint, like most companies like market to women, because unless it's a product that's specifically for men, women in a relationship, if it is a man and woman relationship, the woman is making most of the decisions, let alone financially.
Yeah, we're not purchasing like Manscaped. Like, we'll
No. But you
That's
might be going to Whole Foods a bunch of
okay.
times, you know, if
Yeah,
you're especially if you're a mom and stuff.
Yeah.
So that totally makes
I
sense.
love Whole Foods.
We saw that, like, you know, in terms of your total spending, you obviously spent the most on like a category we call health, which is like just, you know, medical stuff. You know what I was wondering, because you guys don't work anymore, how does insurance work in the fire life, you know?
So
Are you
that's
guys
a
on
good question.
Cobra? Even if you're on Cobra, it only lasts like a year, right? So
God,
how
we
you
were
guys...
on Cobra last year, and it was
So expensive.
we left in the middle of the year, which is a good learning. Insurance wise, like should have left at the end of the year, but we did have Cobra, and we were paying like almost $1,000 a month between the two of us for Cobra. Maybe more. It might have been like $1,300. But anyways, now we are paying about $100 a month for benefits, which is awesome.
But
that's
is it through
because
a company or like...
yeah, it was through the marketplace. It's through
It's the marketplace.
formerly known as Obamacare, and through the healthcare.gov marketplace. California has like their own, some states have their own version of it. And then some states are in kind of the federal one. And yeah, just buy it through healthcare.gov. You have tons of different choices. You get a subsidy based on what your income is. We have a very low income now, so we get a very large subsidy. And so we only pay about $100 a month. And also we happen to be able to have our kids on our ex's insurance, which is a nice benefit because they all still have jobs.
Do you like the insurance? Because I thought the whole thing was that, like, if you don't get it through a company, it's not quote unquote good. Or
Well,
like not
it's-
everybody accepts it or whatever.
It's not exactly true. I mean, there are some, you know, we're a year and a few months into it. You're getting it. I mean, you have like Cigna, Aetna. I mean, I still have Aetna insurance, so it's through a big name company. There are some like weird things I've run into. It'll take us off on some tangents, so you probably don't want to hear it. But at a high level, I would say I actually have better insurance now than I did when I was working. Because when I was working, I would always go for the high deductible insurance plan, so I could have a health savings account, which is an awesome benefit. And it's just got some great tax efficiency. And as a result, every time I would go to the doctor, I would pay until I hit like 20 grand in expenses, which I never hit. I would pay like, it would cost me like $300 to go to urgent care when I had a cold on the weekend. And it was real, everything was really expensive. And so, I mean, I had doctor's appointments where like I had to pay, you know, $1,000 to get a colonoscopy. Like I'm like paying cash for all these appointments. And now I have insurance that has a really low deductible and covers all this stuff. So I pay way less now.
I didn't even think about the fact that because you have so low income, you get a lot of government subsidies. Like that's like interesting little hack with the early retirement thing,
Yeah.
you know?
It is interesting. And some people have like mixed feelings about it, but I will say I paid a massive amount into the system over the last 20 years. So
So
I don't
you
feel
deserve it.
bad getting some decent insurance, which honestly we should be provided anyways.
Yeah.
Which there should be a better system here.
I noticed that like your groceries bill and your like gas bills are like your grocery. This is for a family of what, 4, right? It was like $700. I
5.
feel like my partner and I, we spent like at least 500, and we don't have any kids. We do live in LA, but like I just thought that was super low for a family.
Yeah, we on average, we did a whole episode recently where we were comparing expenses with like all the Inside Out Money co-hosts. And so it was like 3 or 4 families. And our grocery bill was like the lowest. We have 3 kids and they're with us more than half the time just because we have a lot more flexibility. So they're with us like every day after school and stuff.
And you're
And
not
they eat a
buying
lot.
beef. You're not buying beef.
We don't buy meat.
That's
Oh, that's right, they don't buy
expensive.
meat?
Yeah, you're not eating meat.
Yeah.
Your kids are vegan too?
Our kids are vegetarian. We don't force them to, and we don't force them. I mean, when they're like on their own, they eat meat, but we don't
Veggies
serve
can get
them meat.
expensive. You know, if
in
you want
our
to get
house.
creative, it's expensive.
We eat a lot of
Eggs-
veggies and fruit.
Eggs are expensive too.
Eggs are
Like
expensive.
eggs
Eggs are
were
expensive.
during
Yeah.
that time.
During that time, yeah.
When
So
that,
what-
yeah, there
Yeah.
wasn't any
how do you
eggs.
keep it so low?
So we shop at Aldi. I'm like obsessed with Aldi.
Oh.
You might have seen some expenses that were heavier in like the Sam's Club. We shop at mostly Sam's Club and Aldi.
So bulk.
We get like all of our fruits and vegetables in bulk from Sam's Club, which the kids eat like a massive amount of fruit. We're very careful. Like we don't waste food. I just don't like wasting things in general. So I am not really depriving myself of anything in that grocery spend, but we eat pretty like simple foods also. And so we're like, I won't buy like pre-cut fruit at the grocery store because that is just like highway robbery.
Okay, let's role
Thank
play.
you for raising your hand, Steffi. Let's role play. Go.
Let's role play. Mommy. Oh my God. I want kombucha. It's like $17.99, but all my friends are drinking it, and I want to try it. Can I have this?
So, that's a great role play. I
She's like, are you an actress? Because you're so good.
Well done. And that
Meisner technique.
happens
Meisner.
Nice.
about every 4 hours
Shut
in my
up.
house, so it's like very accurate. Maybe you want to like split it with me. It depends. So if it was actually $17 for kombucha, but they love this like bubble tea place, and it's like $12 or $13 for like each of their. Every time we go there, it's like $40 for the 3M to get
Oh
something.
God.
We'll go there like once a week, but I don't go there 3 times a week. But like every couple weeks, they'll get something like that. But the peer pressure is a real thing, and they want it, and I've broken down and bought it for them, and so. Yeah,
How do you explain my question is, how do you explain to them when you don't want to buy them the thing because it's ridiculously expensive?
We're super open about money when we talk with them.
So what do you say?
I will say like, oh no, we're not going to do that today. But like, you know,
You're like, I'm super open to give the vaguest answer. We're just not doing that today.
It depends if we just went. But like the other night, like 2 days ago, we took them to bubble tea and they got their like $40, drink with like 50 things in it. And they loved it, and they know it's not going to happen again until like maybe this weekend.
This bubble tea's not gonna happen again.
Yeah,
That's
it's your
so-
birthday. Wait till next year. You'll
That's
get
so
your
funny.
kombucha.
Yeah.
I mean,
listened
Steffi
to-
got like a $20 milkshake the other day for Erewhon.
Yeah,
I don't know
what
if
do
you
you
guys
think
have
about that?
Erewhons in Georgia.
I
It's
saw
like
you post something about it.
it's like a Whole Foods
How did
Plus.
How did you feel about me buying that glow?
I felt, well, you have a job and you're responsible. You do whatever you want. Like I didn't feel anything
Value-based.
about it.
Value-based.
I've spent.
What if I was your
20
child and I
Well-
bought that and I posted
And
it
she posted
and you
it?
saw it?
We give our kids opportunities to earn money, and I'll talk to them and I'll be like, hey, you like make sure you like think about just plan and have enough money for the stuff you want to do, because they know we're not going to like bankroll every single thing they want to do. But we're very kind of thoughtful with them, and we talk very openly. Like they'll come to the big thing they do a lot is they'll like run up to me in the grocery store. I don't even like going grocery shopping with them because they come up with all sorts of like weird shit. And I'm like, I don't know what this is and why we're getting it. But they'll run up to me with like something. And I'm like, how much is that? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, go check and find out. And I'm just very thoughtful with them. Like they'll come up to me at Aldi and there's some thing of cookies they want. And there's like a $7 thing and then there's a $2 one. And I'm like, do you care? Like, do you really want the $7? Oh, they're like, oh, I don't care. I'll take that $2 one.
Really want
They don't care about certain things. So the things that they don't care about, I'm like, cool. I just teach them to like look at prices and make a thoughtful decision. Now, when they want to want something from Lululemon, like they're getting it as a birthday present. They're getting it as a Christmas present. They're maybe getting it as like some back to school items or something. Like they're getting it on a limited basis. They're using their birthday money that they got from their grandma or something like that. And so, we just try to be reasonable. Like they know they cannot have anything and everything. And we talk very openly. And a lot of times lately, because they're like older and they can talk back to you and they're pretty smart and witty and stuff, I'll say like, well, I'm going to need to go back to work if you're going to keep one. And they're like, cool, could you go back to work?
The thread doesn't work.
Yeah, they're like, they want a swimming pool. And we have like a neighborhood pool that we enjoy going to. And I'm like, we don't
Do
want
you want to see mommy work?
Yeah.
Do you
You're
want
like,
her to
yeah.
suffer?
And I'm like, I need to go back to work for that. And they're like, I'm fine with that. So
They're cutthroat. These are true middle schoolers.
These are
They don't give a
middle
fuck.
schoolers.
They don't
They
give a
don't.
fuck, man.
yeah.
They're like, get off my ass, go to work.
They're like, don't
I
show
don't
up at
care.
my
Get me
school,
my
just go back to work. Buy me
Get me a
pool. Like,
pool.
yeah.
Get me a pool. I want my fucking boba, but I want like
Yes.
triple the amount of boba. I want a $20 Haley
yeah, they're always
Bieber
adding like
smoothie.
extra. They're like, can I get the extra add-ins? And I'm like, okay, that's $2.
But you said they get an allowance, and you can they spend it, or do you shame them in any way if they buy weird stuff with it?
That's a fair point. I shame them lightly. Like I call it like coaching. So I will
Okay.
say something once, and like our oldest is very responsible with money, and I'm pretty sure it didn't just like naturally happen. Like it's because we talk very openly about our own money and about their money, and we give them opportunities to do stuff. So she's actually got a babysitting job today.
Nice.
And she understands the power of like how long you have to work to earn this much money, and then how fast you can spend it. And I think that's important for a 14-year-old to learn and understand. And those are the things that, will continue with you as you get older to build good financial habits, I think.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's so important, and I want to do that with my kids, is have them understand the value of money. But I think like the fact that they understand or even have conversations about money at such a young age with you guys, that's so beneficial for them in the future. Starting
Yeah.
anything really young, I think it helps them
Yeah.
kind of like understand it better and utilize it in ways that are, even if they make mistakes, they're able to be like, okay, well, that was something I learned
Yes.
early on about so that's cool.
Yeah. And look, let me put this in perspective. My kids are like super privileged. They want for nothing. They have way more than any of us had growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to teach them, like, I don't think I would be better off if I was still working and just lavishly giving them everything they wanted. I think I'd be raising kids that aren't who I want to raise, quite honestly.
Well,
So even when I have the money, there's plenty of stuff that I won't buy for them. Even when I have the money, I can afford it. But I'm like trying to teach them moderation and values and, what was the name of that ice cream? One $20 milkshake at a time. I'm trying to teach
Erewhon.
them some good
Erewhon.
financial.
Erewhon.
Erewhon.
It makes your skin glow, girl.
I didn't really know the background of it. There was like something where you were like Hailey Bieber's like skin something.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
in,
Hailey
I thought her
Bieber.
skin was like in the milkshake. I was like, what are you buying for $20?
Yeah, it's
People
a
would
Sweeney
pay
Todd
20 bucks
situation.
for that.
That's
Yeah.
people would actually.
It was like her
it'd be
own
worth
sweat
more
in the
if,
milkshake.
nails were in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, someone's got a kink for that, right?
Oh my gosh, Maggie, that was amazing. Thank you so much for educating us. This was
Actually, like
incredible.
it's our first time learning something.
Yeah, we learned.
on our
It's the
own.
first time that we didn't like keep interrupting your guests because we wanted to say some poop joke. We were just listening, patient,
You
taking
can
notes.
get your
even.
poop jokes in now if you want.
No, that's
She's
not.
cool. She's into it.
She's a
She's
cool
into it. I
mom.
could tell. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can our listeners find you and your work? What would they like them to know about you?
You can find, I've got a podcast that I co-host with a bunch of rotating friends. They're rotating co-hosts, but they're all friends. And it's anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find it. It's called Inside Out Money. And I'm mostly active on Instagram, which is also at Inside Out Money. And you can see what I'm up to and what someone who is, as I call fun employed, does on a day-to-day basis, if that's at all interesting to you.
Definitely check that out, Cuties. And you can always follow us on the socials at Cash Cuties Pod. You can also follow me on there at the Fumi Abe. That's CHEFUMIABE.
And you can find me on Instagram at Baked Goods, BAKEDGUDS. My website, steffibake.com, and Venmo me money if you just want to. And if you're a sub. My Steffie is me.
Hell yeah. And we want to hear about your spending habits. So if you have a financial conundrum that you want to share with us, that you want us to talk about, please email us at cashcutiespodcast@gmail.com and tell us what you want us to talk about. And you can write it out or send us a voice memo, which we prefer.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Cuties, we love you. Maggie, thank you so much. Everybody, we'll see you guys next week. And until then, spend your money wisely.
Or have fun with it.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.